Long before cities, borders, or written history, the human body was shaped by a different world. A world without shelter from the climate, without protection from injury, without systems to soften daily life. To survive, early humans adapted, not culturally, but physically. Their bones, senses, immune systems, and instincts were shaped by constant exposure to movement, danger, scarcity, and change. Over thousands of generations, the human body became something resilient, aware, and deeply connected to its environment. But as tools replaced strength and shelter replaced endurance, those adaptations were no longer required. Some weakened, some faded, some were lost entirely. This video explores several of those ancient human abilities, traits that once made survival possible, and how they slowly disappeared as the world around us changed. Not as myth, not as speculation, but as patterns visible in archaeology, genetics, and the human body itself. We begin with the first of these traits, a physical foundation that supported everything else. The remarkable strength and resilience of the early human skeleton, greater skeletal density and physical resilience. Before the first cities rose from the earth, before walls, roads, or written memory, the human body itself was the primary tool of survival. Early humans lived in a world that offered no forgiveness. Every step mattered. Every fall carried consequence. Injury was not an inconvenience. It was a threat to existence. And so the human skeleton adapted, not for comfort, but for endurance. Fossil evidence from early Homo sapiens and earlier hominins reveals bones that were thicker, denser, and more resistant to impact than those of modern humans. These were not simply larger bodies, but bodies shaped by constant strain. The long bones of the legs show greater cortical thickness, the dense outer layer that resists bending and fracture. Joints were reinforced, and muscle attachment sites were more pronounced, marking a lifetime of movement, lifting, climbing, and long-distance travel. This was not exercise in the modern sense. It was survival expressed through structure. Early humans walked immense distances, often barefoot or minimally protected, carrying tools, food, children, and the weight of migration itself. They moved across uneven terrain, endured falls, and absorbed impacts that modern bodies rarely experience. Bone, unlike most tissues, responds directly to stress. It thickens when challenged and weakens when spared. Generation after generation, the skeleton reinforced itself in response to an unforgiving environment. Those unable to endure were less likely to survive and pass on their traits. Over time, resilience became written into the human frame. As humans transitioned into more stable societies, something subtle began to change. Archaeological evidence shows a gradual reduction in bone density and overall skeletal robustness after the widespread adoption of agriculture. Life became more predictable. Tools replaced raw force. Shelter reduced exposure to environmental extremes. Movement became repetitive rather than varied, localized rather than constant. The extreme skeletal strength once required for survival was no longer essential. Evolution, which preserves only what is needed, began to shift its priorities. Modern humans are not weaker by accident. Our skeletons are lighter, more efficient, and less costly to maintain. Bone density requires energy, and in a world where food was often scarce, efficiency mattered. As the demands on the body decreased, energy could be redirected toward other advantages, most notably brain development and social complexity. The body adapted not to punishment, but to precision. Yet the cost of this shift is visible today. Many modern humans experience stress fractures, joint degeneration, and chronic skeletal pain when exposed to physical demands that resemble those of the past. This is not a failure of will or conditioning. It is a biological mismatch. The environment that shaped our skeletons no longer exists, but our bodies still carry expectations formed by it. Importantly, the genetic systems responsible for bone strengthening have not vanished. They remain active, responding to mechanical load through exercise and labor. Athletes and individuals engaged in intense physical work show increased bone density, demonstrating that this ancient mechanism still functions. However, it operates within limits. The extreme robustness seen in early human remains is rarely achieved today, even under intense training, because modern life does not apply consistent, lifelong stress from early development onward. Early humans were not immune to injury. Their bones bear scars of trauma, fractures, impacts, and strain. But many of these injuries healed, indicating survival after damage that would be debilitating in modern contexts. Their skeletons were not invincible. They were resilient, built to endure repeated stress, recover, and continue. This resilience was not a symbol of strength in the modern sense. It was a record of necessity. Every thickened bone, every reinforced joint reflects a life lived in constant negotiation with gravity, terrain, and risk. Early humans did not seek durability. They required it. We often describe early humans as primitive, but their bodies tell a quieter, more accurate story. They were specialists in endurance, shaped by a world that demanded constant physical engagement. We did not evolve beyond them. We evolved away from the conditions that required their resilience. And while their skeletal strength has faded, the blueprint remains, hidden in our biology, waiting for a world that no longer asks so much. Enhanced neuroplasticity and adaptive intelligence. After the body, the next great adaptation of early humans was not strength, speed, or endurance, but change itself. The early human brain was shaped in a world that never stayed the same. Landscapes shifted with the seasons. Food sources disappeared and returned. Threats evolved. Survival demanded constant learning, adjustment, and reinterpretation of the environment. In such a world, intelligence was not measured by accumulated knowledge, but by the ability to adapt. Neuroplasticity, the brain's capacity to rewire itself in response to experience, is a fundamental human trait. But evidence suggests that in early humans, this ability remains stronger and more active across a longer portion of life than it typically does today. Modern brains tend to specialize early. Neural pathways solidify around language, routine tasks, and cultural norms. Over time, flexibility decreases, and learning becomes more effortful. In contrast, early humans appear to have retained a more adaptable neural state well into adulthood. This was not a matter of higher intelligence in the modern sense. It was a different kind of intelligence, one rooted in responsiveness rather than abstraction. Early humans could not rely on fixed solutions. A strategy that worked one season might fail the next. A familiar path could become dangerous overnight. Tools, techniques, and social behaviors had to be modified continually. Those whose brains could reorganize quickly were more likely to survive. Anthropological evidence supports this pattern. Hunter-gatherer societies, often used as partial models for early human life, show prolonged learning curves. Skills such as tracking, tool-making, navigation, and environmental reading are required over decades, not years. Mastery is gradual, experiential, and deeply contextual. This suggests a brain designed not for early completion, but for long-term adaptability. From a genetic perspective, neuroplasticity is influenced by the timing of brain development. Early humans experienced extended periods of neural growth and refinement, allowing experience to shape cognitive structure more deeply. The brain remained, in a sense, unfinished, open to modification by the world. This openness had advantages. It allowed individuals to adjust to new environments after migration. It supported innovation without formal instruction. It enabled complex cooperation without rigid hierarchy. Knowledge was not stored in texts or institutions. It lived in behavior, memory, and shared experience. But adaptability comes at a cost. A highly plastic brain is energetically expensive. It requires more resources to maintain flexibility than to maintain fixed pathways. As human societies became more stable, predictable, and structured, the advantages of extreme adaptability diminished. Agriculture introduced routine. Settlements reduced environmental uncertainty. Cultural systems began to store knowledge externally through tools, traditions, and eventually writing. The brain no longer needed to remain perpetually flexible. Efficiency replaced openness. Over generations, selective pressure shifted. Neural development became more streamlined. Plasticity windows narrowed. Learning became faster early in life, but less flexible later on. This shift did not make humans less intelligent. It made them differently intelligent. Modern humans excel at specialization. We learn quickly within defined systems. We master abstract symbols, complex language, and technological processes, but we struggle with radical adaptation, especially when familiar structures collapse. This contrast becomes visible in moments of disruption, sudden environmental change, social instability, or unfamiliar survival conditions often overwhelm modern cognitive systems. Stress increases, decision-making narrows, creativity declines. Early humans lived inside disruption. Their brains evolved to expect it. Neuroscientific studies offer subtle echoes of this ancient adaptability. Brain imaging shows that individuals engaged in complex, variable environments, such as navigation-heavy professions or survival-based training, exhibit structural changes in regions associated with spatial memory and problem-solving. The brain still responds to demand, but these responses are temporary. Without sustained, lifelong exposure to unpredictable environments, neural plasticity retracts. The brain settles into efficiency mode, conserving energy and reinforcing familiar pathways. This may help explain a modern paradox. Despite unprecedented access to information, many people feel cognitively rigid. Creativity declines under pressure. Learning new skills later in life feels unnatural, even threatening. This is not because the brain is incapable. It is because it no longer lives in a world that requires constant reinvention. Early humans did not separate thinking from doing. Learning was embodied. Knowledge was tested immediately against reality. Failure carried consequences, but also feedback. The brain adapted not through theory but through lived experience. In such conditions, intelligence was not static. It was fluid. There is no evidence that early humans were smarter than modern humans, but there is strong reason to believe they were more adaptable, mentally prepared for change in a way modern systems rarely encourage. This adaptability shaped more than survival. It influenced social behavior, communication, and cooperation. Flexible minds supported flexible roles. Individuals could shift between tasks, identities, and responsibilities as conditions demanded. Rigid specialization would have been dangerous. As civilization advanced, roles narrowed, skills became compartmentalized. Education replaced experience as the primary driver of learning. The brain adapted accordingly. What was lost was not intelligence, but openness. Yet, like skeletal resilience, this trait was not erased. The genetic foundations of neuroplasticity remain. Under the right conditions, novelty, challenge, uncertainty, the modern brain can still reawaken its adaptive capacity, but those conditions are rare. Early humans did not seek flexibility. They depended on it. Their minds were shaped by a world that refused to stay still. And while modern life rewards stability, the echoes of that ancient adaptability still exist, quiet, dormant, waiting for circumstances that no longer define human survival. Heightened sensory perception and environmental awareness. An adaptable mind requires accurate input. For early humans, learning and survival depended not only on the brain's ability to change, but on the quality of information it received. Before language, before symbols, before abstract reasoning, the world spoke through the senses. Smell, sound, subtle movement, shifts in air, light, and silence. Early humans did not analyze their environment from a distance. They lived inside it, and their senses were tuned accordingly. Modern humans rely heavily on vision, particularly focused vision, reading, screens, fine detail. But early humans depended on a broader sensory awareness. Survival required detecting what was about to happen, not just what was already visible. One of the clearest examples of this difference lies in the sense of smell. Genetic research shows that modern humans carry hundreds of olfactory receptor genes that are inactive or only weakly expressed. In other mammals, and likely in early humans, many of these receptors were fully functional. This suggests that smell once played a far greater role in human perception than it does today. For early humans, smell was not background information. It was a primary channel of awareness. The scent of animals on the wind could signal food or danger. Changes in the smell of vegetation could indicate seasonal shifts. Smoke, decay, unfamiliar human presence all carried meaning long before they were seen. Smell travels faster than sight. It moves around obstacles. It lingers after events have passed. In a natural environment, it provides early warning. As human societies became more visually oriented through tool-making, art, writing, and eventually technology, smell lost its priority. Vision became dominant. Olfactory perception weakened, not because it was inferior, but because it was no longer essential. This shift is visible in anatomy as well. Compared to earlier hominins, modern humans show reduced olfactory bulb size relative to brain volume. The change is subtle, but consistent with a broader pattern. Sensory trade-offs shaped by environment and behavior. Hearing followed a similar trajectory. Early humans lived in acoustically complex environments. Forests, plains, open landscapes where sound carried critical information. Detecting distant footsteps, animal movement, or changes in wind and silence could mean the difference between safety and surprise. Research suggests early humans were particularly sensitive to natural sound frequencies associated with movement and vocalization. This sensitivity supported communication, group coordination, and threat detection in environments without artificial noise. Modern soundscapes are radically different. Engines, machinery, constant background noise, and compressed digital audio dominate daily life. The auditory system adapts by filtering aggressively. Sensitivity declines, not because hearing worsens, but because the brain learns to ignore excess input. The result is a narrowing of awareness. Early humans did not need to filter the world aggressively. Their environment was quieter, but more meaningful. Every sound had potential relevance. Vision, too, functioned differently. Rather than focusing narrowly on static detail, early humans were highly attuned to motion, particularly in peripheral vision. Movement in the edges of perception often signals life. Animals, predators, other humans. This sensitivity remains deeply embedded in the nervous system. Sudden motion still triggers immediate attention and physiological response, even before conscious thought. But modern life trains vision toward fixation. Screens demand prolonged focus. Reading and driving emphasize narrow visual fields. Over time, peripheral awareness weakens, not structurally, but functionally. The senses adapt to what they are asked to do. Early humans did not isolate their senses. Perception was integrated. Smell, sound, sight, and bodily sensation worked together to create a continuous picture of the environment. This integration supported rapid, intuitive decision-making without conscious analysis. What we now call instinct was often sensory intelligence. This kind of awareness cannot be rushed. It develops through constant exposure to variable, natural environments. It requires silence, unpredictability, and consequence. As with skeletal strength and neuroplasticity, the shift away from this sensory mode was gradual. Shelter reduced exposure. Fire extended visibility. Tools increased distance between humans and the environment. Eventually, modern infrastructure created a buffer so complete that sensory vigilance was no longer required. The cost of this buffering is subtle but real. Many modern humans report feeling disconnected from their surroundings. Attention drifts. Awareness narrows. Anxiety increases despite physical safety. The nervous system, evolved for engagement with a living environment, finds itself understimulated in meaningful ways and overwhelmed in artificial ones. Importantly, this does not mean early humans were constantly stressed. In many ways, their sensory systems were calibrated to their world. Information was clear, signals were reliable, threats were real but understandable. Modern environments confuse the senses. Artificial light disrupts circadian rhythms. Constant noise erodes auditory sensitivity. Processed air carries fewer cues. The senses work harder but learn less. Yet, like the traits before it, sensory awareness has not disappeared. Under the right conditions, time in natural environments, reduced artificial stimulation, sustained attention, sensory sensitivity returns. Smell sharpens. Hearing becomes more selective. Peripheral vision reactivates. The system still functions. It is simply underused. Early humans did not romanticize their senses. They depended on them. Awareness was not optional. It was a condition of survival. Their minds adapted because their senses delivered rich, meaningful information. Their bodies endured because perception allowed anticipation. Strength, intelligence, and awareness were not separate traits, but parts of a single, adaptive system. As human life became safer, that system quieted. What remains is an echo, a nervous system still capable of extraordinary awareness, living in a world that rarely asks for it. Superior thermoregulation and climate resilience, heightened senses allowed early humans to read the world. But reading the environment was only half of survival. The body still had to endure it. Early humans lived without insulation from climate. No sealed buildings. No layered clothing engineered for temperature control. No artificial systems to regulate heat or cold. Their bodies were the interface between biology and environment, and survival depended on maintaining balance under constant thermal stress. This balance, thermoregulation, was one of the most critical adaptations early humans possessed. Unlike many mammals, humans rely heavily on internal regulation rather than fur or fat alone. Early humans evolved bodies capable of dispersing heat efficiently while conserving warmth when necessary. This adaptability allowed them to survive across a wide range of environments, from open savannas to colder, shifting climates during ice ages. One of the most important mechanisms behind this resilience was sweating. Humans are exceptional sweaters. Early humans, in particular, had highly active sweat glands distributed across much of the body. This allowed heat to dissipate rapidly during prolonged physical exertion, such as long-distance walking or persistence hunting, without overheating. Sweating is costly. It requires water, electrolytes, and energy. But in a hot, exposed world, it allowed early humans to remain active when other animals were forced to rest. Thermoregulation was not just about comfort. It was a strategic advantage. Cold presented a different challenge. Early humans adapted through a combination of metabolic regulation, body composition, and circulatory control. Blood flow could be redirected to preserve core temperature. Fat distribution varied by population and climate. Muscle mass generated heat through constant movement. Importantly, early humans did not rely on stable temperatures. Their bodies were accustomed to fluctuation, hot days, cold nights, seasonal extremes. The nervous system learned to tolerate discomfort without triggering panic or shutdown. This tolerance mattered. Modern humans often experience thermal stress quickly. Heat exhaustion, hypothermia, and temperature-related fatigue occur at thresholds early humans regularly crossed. This is not because modern bodies are defective, but because they are conditioned for narrow thermal ranges. Climate control changed everything. Shelter insulated the body. Clothing reduced exposure. Fire stabilized nighttime temperatures. Over time, human physiology no longer needed to respond dynamically to environmental extremes. Selective pressure eased. As with other traits, what was no longer essential became less pronounced. Modern thermoregulation still functions, but it is less flexible. Many people struggle to adapt to heat waves or cold exposure without artificial assistance. Sudden temperature changes cause stress responses disproportionate to actual danger. This has subtle neurological effects. Temperature regulation is closely linked to the autonomic nervous system, the system responsible for stress, alertness, and recovery. When thermal balance is challenged, the body activates protective responses. Early humans experienced these challenges constantly, and their nervous systems were calibrated to recover efficiently. Modern nervous systems are often overstimulated by psychological stress, but underexposed to physical stresses like temperature. The result is imbalance, heightened anxiety in safe environments, reduced resilience in natural ones. Early humans did not interpret heat or cold as emergencies. They were signals, information to be managed. This ability to remain functional under thermal stress supported migration. Humans expanded into new regions not because climates were hospitable, but because their bodies could adapt faster than environments could defeat them. That adaptability shaped human history. Yet, like sensory awareness and neuroplasticity, thermoregulation followed the path of least resistance. As technology buffered the body, flexibility declined. The system became less practiced. What remains today is a body that expects stability. Air conditioning, heating systems, and climate-controlled transportation keep temperature constant. The nervous system adjusts accordingly. Sensitivity increases. Tolerance decreases. This helps explain why temperature discomfort now triggers irritability, fatigue, or stress, rather than adaptive adjustment. The body is no longer trained to interpret temperature as manageable input. Still, the capacity has not vanished. Exposure to variable temperatures, cold water, heat, seasonal change, reactivates ancient pathways. Blood vessels adapt. Metabolism shifts. Tolerance improves. Early humans did not pursue resilience. They lived inside it. Their bodies learned to function across extremes because extremes were unavoidable. Sensory awareness warned them of change. Cognitive flexibility allowed adaptation. Each trait reinforced the others. As humans gained control over their environment, this internal coordination became less necessary. The body relaxed. Systems quieted. Trade-offs favored efficiency over resilience. What was lost was not capability, but practice. Early humans were not hardened by suffering alone. They were regulated by exposure. Their bodies were in constant dialogue with the world, responding, adjusting, stabilizing. In a climate-controlled age, that dialogue has softened, but the language is still there. And in the right conditions, the body still knows how to speak it. Broader, more aggressive, immune response. Surviving the elements was only part of the challenge early humans faced. Even when the body endured heat, cold, hunger, and injury, another threat remained, one that could not be seen, smelled, or anticipated through movement alone: disease. Early humans lived in intimate contact with the natural world. They drank untreated water, consumed raw or minimally prepared food, slept on the ground, and shared space with animals, insects, parasites, and one another. Infection was not an occasional risk. It was a constant presence. In such an environment, survival depended on an immune system that responded quickly, decisively, and without hesitation. Early humans carried immune systems that were broader and more aggressive than those of most modern populations. Their defenses were tuned, not for precision, but for speed. When a foreign organism entered the body, the response was often immediate and inflammatory. The goal was not comfort or efficiency, it was elimination. This aggressiveness came with trade-offs. But in a world where untreated infection could kill within days, restraint was a luxury few could afford. Genetic evidence supports this pattern. Many immune-related genes in modern humans show signs of intense selection during earlier periods of human evolution. Variants associated with strong inflammatory responses were preserved because they increased the likelihood of surviving repeated exposure to unfamiliar pathogens. Early humans did not encounter the same disease twice in predictable ways. Migration exposed them to new environments and new microorganisms. Immune memory helped, but flexibility mattered more. The immune system had to respond to unknown threats quickly, even if that response was imperfect. Inflammation, fever, fatigue, these were not malfunctions. They were weapons. From a modern perspective, such responses appear excessive, but for early humans, they were often life-saving. A body that reacted too slowly rarely recovered. This aggressive immune strategy was reinforced by constant exposure. Children encountered pathogens early in life. Survival strengthened immune resilience over time. Those who lived long enough passed on immune traits shaped by repeated biological conflict. As human societies changed, so did this relationship. Permanent settlements brought higher population density, increasing disease transmission. At the same time, improvements in shelter, cooking, and sanitation reduced exposure to certain pathogens. Over centuries, this created a complex shift in immune selection. Then came the most significant change of all: modern medicine. Antibiotics, vaccines, hygiene practices, and clean water dramatically reduced the immediate threat posed by infection. Survival no longer depended on an immune system capable of overwhelming force. External systems took over roles once managed internally. The immune system adapted accordingly. Aggressive responses became less necessary. Precision became more advantageous. Over time, selective pressure eased on genes that promoted intense inflammation. The immune system did not weaken, but it changed strategy. This transition was rapid in evolutionary terms. The human immune system evolved over hundreds of thousands of years under constant biological stress. Modern medical environments emerged in mere centuries. The body did not have time to recalibrate fully. The result is a mismatch. Many immune traits that once protected early humans now manifest as problems in modern environments. Genes associated with strong inflammatory responses are now linked to autoimmune conditions, allergies, and chronic inflammation. The immune system, still primed for danger, sometimes turns its weapons inward. This does not mean the immune system is malfunctioning. It means it is operating according to ancient expectations in a world that no longer matches them. Early humans did not live in sterile environments. Their immune systems expected constant engagement. Modern environments, by contrast, often limit microbial exposure while simultaneously introducing novel stresses, pollution, processed food, chronic psychological stress. The immune system responds, as it always has, by escalating. This helps explain why many immune-related conditions are more common in industrialized societies than in traditional ones. Reduced exposure to diverse microorganisms may leave the immune system undertrained, increasing the likelihood of misdirected responses. Early humans rarely experienced immune boredom. Every day presented biological challenges. The immune system learned through repetition. It distinguished threat through experience, not theory. Modern immune systems often lack this training. They exist in controlled environments punctuated by sudden, unfamiliar stresses. The result is heightened reactivity without clear targets. Importantly, early humans did not possess perfect immunity. Disease was still a major cause of death, but those who survived infections often developed strong, lasting resistance. Their immune systems were not gentle, but they were effective within the context they evolved for. This effectiveness supported migration, social cooperation, and long-term survival. Groups with resilient immune systems could endure crowded living, shared food, and close physical contact without catastrophic collapse. Immune strength was not an individual trait alone, it was a group advantage. As with skeletal resilience, neuroplasticity, sensory awareness, and thermoregulation, immune aggression was shaped by necessity. When that necessity diminished, the trait softened, but it did not disappear. Modern humans still carry the genetic foundations of this ancient immune strategy under extreme conditions: injury, infection, environmental stress. The system can still respond with remarkable force. But in everyday life, that force is often unnecessary. The immune system waits for a world that no longer exists. A world where danger was constant, visible, and biological rather than abstract. A world where survival depended on rapid response, not long-term management. Early humans did not think about immunity. They lived inside its consequences. Their bodies fought daily battles that modern medicine now prevents. That prevention is one of humanity's greatest achievements. But it also means the immune system has fewer opportunities to do what it evolved to do. What remains is tension, an ancient defense system operating in a modern environment. And like many of the traits explored in this video, the immune system tells the same quiet story, not of loss through failure, but of change through success. As humans mastered their environment, the body stood down, not because it was no longer capable, but because it was no longer required to fight alone. Innate spatial navigation ability. Once early humans could endure their environment and survive its biological threats, another challenge remained: finding their way through it. Movement was not optional. Survival depended on it. Early humans traveled across vast, unmapped landscapes without roads, signs, or written directions. They migrated across continents, followed animals through changing seasons, and returned to distant locations with remarkable accuracy. This was not guesswork, and it was not luck. It was an ability shaped by necessity, innate spatial navigation. Unlike modern navigation, which relies on external tools, early human navigation was internal. Direction, distance, terrain, and memory were integrated into a single mental map, constantly updated through experience. This ability was not taught formally. It emerged through exposure. Early humans learned landscapes the way modern people learn language, by living inside them. Hills, rivers, tree lines, rock formations, stars, wind patterns, and the position of the sun all carried meaning. Navigation was not a task performed occasionally. It was a continuous background process. The human brain adapted accordingly. Regions associated with spatial memory and orientation, particularly the hippocampus, were heavily engaged. Evidence from both archaeological inference and modern neurological studies suggests that frequent navigation through complex environments strengthens these areas structurally and functionally. In early humans, navigation was not abstract. It was embodied. They remembered routes not as lines on a map, but as sequences of experience, where the ground changed, where the air smelled different, where the land opened or closed. Memory was anchored to sensation, movement, and time. This kind of navigation supported survival in subtle ways. Knowing where water would appear after rain, where animals migrated seasonally, or how to return safely in darkness, reduced risk and conserved energy. A wrong turn could mean starvation or exposure. Those who navigated well lived longer. Those who did not were less likely to pass on their traits. Importantly, this ability did not require conscious calculation. It was intuitive. Early humans did not stop to determine direction. They felt it. Orientation emerged automatically through continuous environmental feedback. Modern humans still carry traces of this system. Studies of individuals who rely heavily on navigation show increased hippocampal activity and volume. The brain still adapts to spatial demand, but for most modern people, that demand no longer exists. Maps, compasses, GPS systems, and digital navigation have externalized a function once handled entirely by the brain, direction is no longer sensed. It is consulted. This shift happened extremely quickly. In evolutionary terms, reliance on navigational tools developed in mere generations. The brain did not lose its capacity for spatial mapping, but it lost the need to practice it. Unused systems quiet down. As navigation became automated, internal mapping weakened. Many modern people struggle with basic orientation without assistance. Getting lost produces anxiety rather than problem solving. Awareness of surroundings narrows. This is not cognitive decline. It is cognitive disuse. Early humans did not have the option to disengage from their environment. Navigation required constant attention to subtle cues. Over time, this produced a deep sense of place, an understanding of land that was both practical and emotional. Places were not interchangeable. Modern environments are different. Roads override terrain. Buildings block landmarks. Artificial lighting disrupts natural cues. Movement occurs at speeds that prevent gradual spatial learning. The result is fragmentation. The brain receives less consistent spatial information and has fewer opportunities to build integrated maps. Navigation becomes episodic rather than continuous. This affects more than direction. Spatial navigation is closely linked to memory, imagination, and future planning. The same neural systems used to recall routes are used to simulate possibilities and anticipate outcomes. When spatial engagement declines, these functions are subtly affected as well. Early humans lived inside landscapes that demanded awareness across time and distance. Their planning was rooted in movement, where resources would be, where danger might appear, where safety existed. Navigation shaped thought. As environments became more predictable and controlled, this cognitive relationship weakened. The world no longer needed to be read. It could be followed. Yet, as with every trait explored so far, the capacity remains. When modern humans spend extended time navigating natural environments without assistance, orientation improves. The system wakes up. This suggests that early humans did not possess a mystical sense of direction. They possessed a practiced one. Navigation was not a talent, it was a condition of survival. Early humans did not know where they were in an abstract sense. They were embedded in place. Their identity was tied to land, movement, and direction. To lose one's way was not an inconvenience. It was a threat to existence. This made navigation deeply social as well. Routes were shared. Landmarks were remembered collectively. Knowledge passed through story and experience rather than instruction. Spatial memory belonged to the group. As societies settled and territories stabilized, this collective navigation became less critical. Boundaries replaced memory. Infrastructure replaced intuition. The body adapted. Today, most people live in environments designed to minimize the need for orientation. This makes life efficient, but it also removes a source of engagement the brain evolved to expect. Early humans moved through the world with awareness that extended beyond the immediate moment. Their navigation linked past experience, present sensation, and future possibility into a continuous whole. They did not separate thinking from moving, and as with immune defense, sensory awareness, cognitive adaptability, and physical resilience, this ability softened not because it failed, but because it succeeded. The world became easier to navigate. The mind no longer had to. What remains is a quiet capacity, still present beneath layers of automation, waiting for landscapes that demand attention rather than instruction. Efficient energy use during scarcity. Knowing where to go meant little if there was nothing waiting there. For early humans, abundance was never guaranteed. Food arrived in cycles, sometimes plentiful, sometimes absent for long stretches. Survival depended not only on finding resources, but on enduring their absence. In such conditions, the body's relationship with energy became one of its most important adaptations. Early humans evolved to use energy efficiently, storing it when available and conserving it when necessary. This was not a matter of willpower or discipline. It was biology shaped by repeated exposure to scarcity. Periods of hunger were common. Meals were unpredictable. Long-distance movement, illness, injury, or environmental change could interrupt access to food for days or weeks. Those whose bodies could slow down, preserve vital functions, and maintain strength during scarcity were more likely to survive. This efficiency was built into metabolism. Early human bodies were adept at switching between fuel sources. When food was available, energy could be stored as fat. When food disappeared, metabolism shifted, prioritizing essential systems and reducing unnecessary expenditure. Muscle, brain, and immune function were preserved as long as possible. This ability required flexibility. Rather than maintaining constant energy output, early human metabolism adjusted dynamically. Activity levels changed. The body entered conservation modes without collapsing. This was not starvation, it was adaptation. From a genetic perspective, traits supporting efficient energy use were strongly favored. Variants that allowed survival during famine were passed on, generation after generation. In a world where death from hunger was common, efficiency mattered more than speed or size. Importantly, early humans did not experience chronic overconsumption. Calories were earned through effort. Energy intake was closely tied to movement, exposure, and risk. The metabolic system evolved in harmony with this rhythm. This balance shaped body composition. Early humans tended to carry lean muscle, optimized for endurance rather than bulk. Fat storage existed, but it was functional, distributed to support survival during lean periods rather than constant surplus. Modern bodies still carry this blueprint. The ability to store energy efficiently remains embedded in human genetics. But the environment that once activated this trait has reversed. Food is now constant. Calorie-dense resources require little effort. Scarcity, when it occurs, is often psychological rather than physical. The metabolic system, designed for fluctuation, now exists in continuous surplus. This creates conflict. Energy-efficient bodies respond to abundance by storing excess. In the absence of true scarcity, the same traits that once protected early humans during famine now contribute to metabolic disorders in modern environments. This is not dysfunction. It is adaptation operating in the wrong context. Early humans did not eat according to schedules. They ate according to opportunity. Their bodies expected variability. Hormonal systems regulating hunger, satiety, and energy expenditure evolved under conditions of uncertainty. Modern routines disrupt this signaling. Constant access to food confuses systems designed to interpret scarcity. Hunger cues become unreliable. Energy storage increases even when survival does not require it. Yet, early humans did not experience metabolic stress as modern humans often do. Their bodies were accustomed to alternating states of effort and rest, intake and depletion. This rhythm supported resilience. Movement played a crucial role. Energy efficiency was paired with high daily activity. Walking, carrying, climbing, and tool use consumed stored energy naturally. There was no separation between energy intake and energy use. Modern life separates them completely. The result is stagnation, stored energy with nowhere to go. From an evolutionary perspective, this mismatch is recent. The metabolic system has not failed. It is simply responding to signals it evolved to trust. Early humans lived inside scarcity often enough that energy conservation did not feel threatening. The body recognized lean periods as temporary. Stress responses were calibrated accordingly. Modern scarcity is different. Food insecurity now often coexists with calorie abundance but nutritional imbalance. Psychological stress replaces physical hunger. The body responds defensively, increasing storage rather than flexibility. This highlights an important truth. Energy efficiency was never meant to operate alone. It functioned alongside movement, sensory awareness, cognitive adaptability, and environmental engagement. Each trait reinforced the others. When movement declined, energy systems lost balance. When environment became predictable, metabolism lost rhythm. When scarcity disappeared, efficiency became excess. Early humans did not fear hunger the way modern humans do. It was part of life's cycle. Their bodies expected it and responded without panic. This does not mean hunger was easy. It was dangerous, but it was familiar. The ability to remain functional during scarcity allowed early humans to survive droughts, migrations, and seasonal collapse. It supported exploration. It made long-term planning possible. Without energy efficiency, none of the other traits mattered. Today, the same system operates quietly beneath modern life. It stores, conserves, and prepares for a shortage that rarely arrives. What was once a life-saving adaptation has become a source of discomfort and misunderstanding. Yet, the system has not changed. It still remembers a world where nothing was guaranteed, a world where survival depended not on abundance, but on patience. And like every trait explored in this journey, efficient energy use was not lost through failure. It faded through success. As humans learned to produce and store food externally, the body continued to do the same internally, long after it was necessary. The ancient rhythm remains, waiting